Welcome to the Friday edition of Juan's World. And although I will be posting this on Friday, October 2nd, I'm actually recording it on Thursday, October 1st. And today is a big day in lots and lots and lots of ways. First of the month, one of the things I always have to do, first thing when I open my eyes in bed in the morning, before I say anything else, is to say rabbits, 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 or some people say rabbits, rabbits, white rabbits. Old English custom to bring luck for the coming months, and I always do it. Happy to do it this month. Once in a very, very great while, something goes wrong. When I was living in China 6 years ago, first of the month came and I had to get up to go to the bathroom, and one of my roommates and his girlfriend was sitting in the living room, and I said, "Hi, how are you?" to them as I walked by, and they said, "Oh no, it's the first of the month," and I didn't say my rabbit. So anyway, October's protected. And speaking of China, today is a big day for two reasons. One of them is that October 1st is the National Day, the day they celebrate the creation of the People's Republic of China. But it also happens this year to be the full moon of autumn, and that is the marker for the Mid-Autumn Festival, which is the second biggest festival in China after the Chinese New Year. And you're supposed to, and you take a week off, really, more or less. So, and it's very strange this year because the National Day and Mid-Autumn Festival falling on the same day makes it very difficult to have a proper holiday for both. So all kinds of weird things have had to happen. But anyway, there's a week-long holiday essentially called the Golden Week. You're supposed to eat moon cakes and rice noodles and all kinds of things. And if this were not a year of plague, I would probably be traveling to China for the festival. Visit my son, visit friends. I was hoping I might be staying there. Oh, it's been just a terrible year all round for that kind of thing. It's also World Vegetarian Day, when we celebrate people who are vegetarians. And what I want to focus on is a United Nations declaration some years ago that today should be the International Day of Older Persons. Now, the edict does not define what an older person is, but I think I qualify. I'm 69, and I think if we take the retirement age as older, which can be anywhere from 60 to 65, or even maybe a little older than that in some countries. It's now 67 in the United States. But one way or another, I know I fall under the rubric of older person. And what I want to do is unpack that a little bit. Why do so-called older persons need an international day of celebration? At minimum, it strikes me as being really, really condescending. Let's get started down that path. Now, the celebration of so-called older persons must be driven by the fact that in recent times these older persons have not been granted the respect that they had at one point. I'm not sure entirely whether that's true or not worldwide, but it might be. And one of the reasons it might be is the pace of the development of technology. You know, in, let's say, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, if you're living in a farming community, and let's say you have an unusually late frost followed by really drenching rains, such that your fields are all sodden and you can't really plow, but you've got to get your harvest in before a certain date, otherwise, that is, I mean, your seeds. When I say harvest, you know, you've got to plant your seeds at a certain point, otherwise they won't grow and mature and be ready at the right time and so on. So you've got a bit of a problem on your hands, and this has not ever happened in the living memory of the active farmers. Well, one of the things that they would do is they would go to the really old people in the village and they'd say, what can we do? And if you're lucky, one of them would say, well, that never happened in my lifetime, but when I was a boy, my father told me that they did such and so under these conditions. And that way you have a kind of repository of wisdom. And in fact, legally, that repository of wisdom was sometimes called upon when there were disputes about land boundaries and ownership, that they would, the courts would go to the oldest people in the village and say, well, as far back as you can remember, where was the border, or who owned this land, and so forth. So there was a time, that is before the Industrial Revolution, when technology didn't change all that much. The famous case of a farmer in the time of Alfred the Great, that's like before the Norman Conquest, talking about his plowing day, and he's talking about how he hooks up his oxen and he plows an acre in a day with his boy helping him. And in the early 19th century, before the development of mechanized farm equipment, that description was still true. So for approximately 1,000 years, the technology of farming was not significantly different. Certainly in the 18th century, things were changing a lot, but there was still a long period, a long period, when the knowledge of the oldest members of the community was extremely valuable. And then along comes the Industrial Revolution, and things had just all changed. That younger people adopt the new technology, and the older people are left in the dust. And you can see that in modern times when it comes to computer technology. I will say that I do keep pace with many features, not all, but so it doesn't quite apply to me. But I mean, if you ask me about the latest role-playing game, for example, I have no idea because it's not important to me. If you play or Candy Crush, for example. I have no idea. It's not interesting to me. I can tell you about Facebook or Instagram, not Twitter, not TikTok. There's a lot that I can't tell you about. But basically, the point I'm trying to make is that if technology keeps changing and changing and changing so fast that as people age they can't keep up with it, then their knowledge base becomes more and more useless. And value in culture becomes predominantly directed towards the younger, who are more knowledgeable about the newest technologies. And what that does is it sidelines older persons. The critical factor for me is that the knowledge base of older persons may not be terribly relevant to technology because it changes so fast and it's difficult to keep up. There was a time, for example, many moons ago, when I could work on a car. Apart from the fact that I don't have a car right now, 10 years ago I had a relatively modern car, and I didn't know what to do very much when I opened up the hood. I could I could put new oil in, or a couple of odds and ends like that, but I couldn't do the kinds of things that I used to be able to do 40 years ago. So a lot of things happen with the change of technology that makes the knowledge base of older heads relatively obsolete. I wouldn't say completely worthless, but relatively obsolete. But not completely. And in certain areas, like in my area of teaching, the technology may change a lot. We have smart classrooms now, of course, and all kinds of other technology that can assist in your teaching. But I have not really found an adequate substitute for sitting in a circle and talking. And Socrates was doing that. I mean, there's certain things about teaching that have to do with I'll say wisdom as being a bit immodest, but experience, and that just comes with age. Also, being able to comfort people who've lost their loves, or who are bereaved, or in some other way their lives have drastically changed. Well, older persons have experience, and they can counsel people, or comfort them, maybe not even counsel them, just comfort them, know something because they have experienced those things themselves, so they can feel empathy. Now, the difference between empathy and sympathy, that sympathy is you can feel sorry for somebody else whether or not you've experienced what they're going through. But empathy specifically means that you can put yourself in their place. In some ways you've experienced it. Empathy comes with age. So there's a lot of things that older persons know and can help with, but it's not always valued, because a higher price is placed on technology, and when I mean price, I mean social price. A higher value is placed on the technology, and a lower value is placed on the knowledge base that is other than technology. And that's not the fault of society as a whole, and that's not a fault of the development of technology. That's the choice of individuals. So I was teaching in Italy 5 years ago, and around this time of year I was just starting the school term, and the headmaster said that he wanted all of the fifth year history students, that is the upper level, the students who are in their final year, to take English history lessons, that is lessons in English, not English history, but lessons in English because it was mandated by the government. Most of the students were okay with this, and most of the teachers were too, but one or two got a little upset, and I had to have these conversations with them, mostly younger teachers in their 20s, and they're all basically saying, what does this old guy know? And yeah, I can be sympathetic in a way because I didn't know their exact curriculum. But one of the things I told them was that I had experience of what they call history. They were studying at the time that I taught them. I taught them for a total, I think, of about 10 weeks. I taught them mostly about the First World War, its causes and its ramifications, and we did lots of different things. And what I said to them was, yeah, I knew a lot of people who were in that war. Both my grandfathers were in that war, and I knew at least my maternal grandfather. I didn't know my paternal grandfather. My maternal grandfather was in the Ox and Bucks Regiment. He was a trench soldier. He was gassed and demobilized. Ultimately, later in his life, he died of pulmonary conditions, probably exacerbated by the gassing. I knew men in Australia who had fought in the Dardanelles campaign in places like Gallipoli. All of these historical events that are well before my time, but I was still impacted by them because I knew the people who had experienced those things, who'd experienced the withering fire on landings in Gallipoli and trench warfare and gassing and all of that. I knew people who had experienced those things. And it's one of the aspects of being an anthropologist that's really important to me, because I have documented people's experiences in what we call life history, or sometimes we call it oral history. And I've taught life history and oral history methods to other students, because people have those memories, and they're personal and detailed and specific, and when those people are gone, those memories are gone. So we need to preserve them. Those older persons have a body of knowledge that's important to know. I mean, we can know the impact of the First World War on governments, on nations, on a grand scale. I'm interested in the personal experience, how you live with it, how you cope with being in the trenches knowing that you have a life expectancy of about 3 weeks. It changes you. And if you can tell that story to other people, it might be able to change them too. Older persons have stories to tell, and they're important stories. They're not globally important or massively important for the history books, but they are experientially important. And when we sideline older persons, when we decide, okay, granny or grandpa's getting too old, we'll put them off into a nursing home, we're invalidating all of that experience, all of that emotional memory, all of those feelings, and we're just saying they're not important for us. That is something that we can do something about. We can decide we're not going to send these old folks off to a retirement home and forget about them, go see them on Sunday afternoon once a week. I mean, I understand that some people with Alzheimer's or severe dementia or some other condition can make it impossible to look after them. But the vast majority of people just get old and can't do the things that they used to be able to do. They need a walker or a wheelchair, or they maybe need to be got up and dressed in the morning and need help with bathing and so forth, but they can still live at home. And certainly I've had relatives who've lived well into their 90s, who've lived at home all their lives and have lived perfectly productive lives and are still important members of the society. It's not the changes in the society, it's not the changes in the technology that has made this change from valuing the knowledge base of old people to valuing youth. That's not caused by technological change. That's caused because people have made that decision. And I think it's a very bad decision. And I'm not just saying that because I'm an older person. I don't ever want to be sidelined. I live alone quite deliberately because I want to be alone. And I'll keep that up as long as I can. I'm talking about your decisions about people in your lives who are old and who occasionally you might think of as a nuisance or something of the sort. Just think about your attitude towards us older persons. And you can help this older person by liking, by subscribing, and I will see you on Tuesday. And I'm thinking I'm going to get the pots and pans out. I do have a lot to do. Another one of my books has just come back from reviewers and I've got a lot of editing to do. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to be doing some cooking. Stand by.